We don't have to think alike. We don't have to be alike. We actually don't even have to, like or love one another, but we must understand one another.
Coming up, I talk with National Book Award-winning author Colum McCann about his work and the power of storytelling to bring people together. That's Conversations from the Sun Valley Writers Conference next. Stay tuned.
Major funding is provided by the Idaho Public Television Endowment and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Hello and welcome to Conversations from the Sun Valley Writers Conference. I'm Marcia Franklin. Author Colum McCann doesn't take on easy subjects. Whether it's a novel about people working and living in the New York City subway tunnels or a true story about a mother whose son was murdered by terrorists, McCann delves into life's darker nooks and crannies. But he also celebrates the light that can illuminate those corners and the ties that bind seemingly disparate people together. The author of 13 books, including A Paragon and Let the Great World Spin, which won the National Book Award, McCann is also the founder of Narrative 4. The international nonprofit uses the power of mutual storytelling to build relationships between young people from all kinds of backgrounds. I caught up with Colum McCann at the 2025 Sun Valley Writers Conference, where I first interviewed him in 2011. We talked about his latest novel, Twist, which braids the stories of two men on a ship that repairs underwater internet cables. But I also wanted to know about what drives his seemingly irrepressible work ethic and sense of optimism. Well, welcome back to Idaho. It's so great to have you here again.
It's so great to see you. Thank you so much.
We last spoke in 2011, and since then, so much has happened. I mean, internationally, there's COVID, obviously. I'm going to have to look at my notes because in your life, I have down that you have written 5 books since then, an opera, a one-woman play, and traveled all over the world with your nonprofit Narrative 4, including meeting the Pope. Mm-hmm. I'm sure I've missed some things. You have been, let's just put it, a lot busier than I have been since 2011. That's a lot.
It does seem like a long time ago, 2011. I think, though, we're living in the exponential age, that things are happening so quickly. It also feels to me that, as a writer, there's so much to do, so much to say. And maybe sometimes I feel the job of the writer is to get at a form of repair. And you want to try and find the still point where we can calm some of that quickness down and really start to look at ourselves, contemplate ourselves. And I still believe in the power of stories and storytelling for us to engage with one another. That you and I and everyone out there, we need to know each other.
Some people hide from it, and I talked to somebody yesterday who said, I'm just not looking at the news.
Yeah.
I can't look at the news.
A lot of people are coming indoors. They're closing the curtains. They're putting a GPS coordinate on their imagination and saying, I will only remain in this one place. I get it. I understand it. I actually sometimes want to do it myself. But part of the problem is that we're coming indoors and isolating ourselves, and or we're only staying with people who look like us or sound like us or vote like us. We live in an age, I said earlier, it's the exponential age, but it's also the age of certainty in a weird way, which is kind of different. Yes, everything's happened so quickly, but now also everybody wants to be entirely certain of what they think and who they are. And this certainty leads to a sort of banality that, just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. And there are floodplains between us that we're not inhabiting. But I do think that literature, theater, filmmaking, storytelling, all of these things will become the way that we can engage or re-engage with one another.
If they survive, which I assume they will because they have through other eras of challenge.
Yeah, well, you say something profoundly important, if they survive. Now, it's possible that say, books won't survive. It's possible that opera, for instance, won't survive. It's even possible that film won't survive. But the one thing that is impossible and must go on is the idea of story. And you can take away a lot of things, but you cannot take away a person's story. So one of the things that I've been working on with this nonprofit Narrative 4 is getting young people to tell stories to one another and then to retell that story back to one another in the first person. So you become me and I become you. And in the process, there's this great leap of empathy. And we don't have to think alike. We don't have to be alike. We actually don't even have to, like or love one another, but we must understand one another.
It wouldn't be a secret or surprise to you that some people have said that this is way too earnest and, naive, that simply just let's sit down and talk to each other and share each other's stories is too kumbaya.
Sure. People call it too kumbaya, too airy, and I get it. I mean, there are times I even think so myself until I see it work in person. So if you can imagine a 16, 17-year-old, young person in say in Boise, getting a chance to tell her story and suddenly feeling valuable, but she tells somebody else's story at the same time, suddenly the universe opens and it's a really powerful thing.
I'm thinking about Congress, though.
I would love to bring this to Congress. Now, can you imagine that we get a group of Republicans and a group of Democrats to sit in a room together and do this? If we could, I promise you that it would change things. The whole principle of emergence, that we are greater than the sum of our parts. I'd like to apply that notion to the idea of storytelling. Let's put all our stories together, and I'm sure that we can be more intelligent than our individual stories and work like a flock of birds and work with one another. Does that sound silly, naive, sentimental? I'm prepared to put my heart on my sleeve and say that I can take any cynic on, because I do believe that the world is dark. I do believe that human nature tends sometimes towards some of the most terrible things, but I also believe that we have to have optimism, or else we're not going to get out of this.
Spoken like a true Irishman.
Yeah, maybe.
Both sides.
Yeah, well, see, Ireland is an interesting, we have had a peace process since 1998, which means 27 years of peace in Ireland, which is a pretty extraordinary thing. And I would say to you that if you'd come to me 40 years ago and said there was going to be peace in Ireland, I'd say you're crazy. You're out of your mind. But the possible exists within the impossible. Walls come tumbling down. The Berlin Wall came down. Israel is at peace with Egypt. Who would have thought that in the early 1970s, that there would be a peace agreement that's now 50 years old? And these things can happen. It just takes a wealth of commitment from proper, decent-minded people. And you fail, and you fail, and you fail until you don't.
One of the books that you wrote since I last saw you was A Paragon.
Right.
And this is the theme, right? And it's two men originally from a very interesting group. I recommend people look into, Combatants for Peace.
Yeah.
And you share their story. One is a Palestinian man whose daughter was killed by an Israeli military person, and the other is an Israeli man whose daughter was killed by an Islamic suicide terrorist bomber. And these two men have become the best of friends.
Against all the odds.
And against all the odds. Even still after October 7th, I understand that they still talk to each other.
They called each other on October the 7th. And Bassam said to Rami, "Come stay with me, I'll protect you." And then as things started to unfold differently, Rami called Bassam, "Come stay with me, I'll protect you."
It's a really, really interesting book, not the least of which because you're playing with the novel form in it at the same time that you're telling these two men's stories. This story, though, is at the core of it, which is that two people who seemingly have just this deep well of hatred and animosity against each other have come together. and it's a very moving.
It's an
story.
extremely moving, and it's actually, I think, much more possible than we give it credit for. I just think that we sow fear in our communities, and we pretend that it's not going to be possible. But like I will say, in relation to Israel and in relation to Palestine, that it's so much more nuanced than we're getting, or than we're allowing ourselves to hear.
It's very, very dire, though, right now.
It's extremely dire right now.
Beyond.
It's extremely dire right
talking.
now. Yes, but give it some time. Is there anything that we can learn? Rami and Bassam would both say peace is inevitable. So who could have believed that 50 years after the Holocaust there would be an Israeli embassy in Bonn and that there would be a German embassy in Tel Aviv? Seriously, how can you think of it? It seems an incredible thing to think about, but it happened, and so I think with the force of human commitment and some agile thinking and some decency and some empathy, there's all sorts of things that are still possible.
Another book that you wrote since I last saw you, American Mother, also looks at this. It's just unbelievable. Diane Foley, the mother of James Foley, all of us who are journalists know who James Foley was, decapitated by ISIS. You're telling her story. You spent so much time with her. She actually met one of the people who was involved in her son's murder and forgave him.
It was the most incredible moment. 7 years after her son was killed, she went down to Virginia. He was taken out of the prison cell that he was in. We went to a courthouse and we sat together for a total of 3 days. And she talked to him. They talked about religion. They talked about war. They talked about engagement. They talked about violence. They talked about Jim. They talked about journalism. And in the end, they stood up and they shook hands with one another in this most extraordinary gesture of compassion and forgiveness. And, you know, I think it's a lesson that the whole country or the whole world actually needs to hear, because she listened and he listened. And in the end then, they were able to have their differences but still understand one another, which was amazing. I knew I had to write about it because it was one of the most extraordinary. It's a Shakespearean story, really, when you think about it.
That's why we need writers, so they can imagine options for us, and then we learn about them. And
I think that's really smart. I think that, and thank you for saying that, because that is why we need writers, to parse some of these incredibly difficult emotional choices that we're trying to make, and to look at the world for us and say, well, it's not so one-sided. And also, you know, I do believe in this notion that there's not only one truth. Sometimes there's a lot more than one truth. And sometimes the opposite of a profound truth, as Niels Bohr, the scientist, says, can be another profound truth. So I've just written a novel called Twist, which is about technology and cables.
We want to make sure to get to that.
Oh yeah, but the thing about it is, people say, well, is technology good or is technology bad? Well, technology is good, yes, and I can make several arguments for it. And technology is bad. And how do you hold these two contradictory ideas in the palms of your hands at the exact same time? As F. Scott Fitzgerald would have said, you know, that's the essence of intelligence, to be able to do so. It was fascinating to me to look at the world of underwater cables and all the information that they carry about us and think, are these things, you know, what's going on in the world of technology? Is this the new colonialism? Because everything that I send will travel down a tube, believe it or not, that's the size of a garden hose. It's amazing to me that those hoses can get ruptured, they can get sabotaged, and all the information in the world. To me, it was a fantastic story that, well, it was difficult to do, and so people hadn't really written about it before. How do you write about our lives traveling as light? in a tube under the ocean.
It ties into these concepts of repair
Right.
that we've been touching on. And one is the story about a very real boat that exists that you've been on
Right.
that repairs underwater
Cable.
internet cables.
Yeah.
That, I'm like everybody else. I thought before I read your book, it was
Me too.
all up in the satellites, all up in
Yeah.
the sky. But no, there are these very vulnerable cables
Yeah.
under the sea. And I've heard you say that, another war could start from
Absolutely.
pirates or non-state actors or state actors cutting these things.
Guess what? I had the greatest publicity and marketing campaign organized for me by the Russian government and the Chinese government, who recently began cutting cables in the Baltic Sea and in other places. Cables are. A lot of the military experts will say to you that the next big war will begin underwater. Why is that? Because it will all be about information and disinformation. You cut the cables, you cut the information that's coming in, and then you start to use disinformation as a form of warfare, a form of engagement, and that to me was fascinating. But I thought that all our information went up in the cloud. Actually, the cloud lives at the bottom of the sea.
And another strand, so to speak, is the two men characters on the boat. One's a journalist. One directs all this repair.
Yeah.
Who have their own internal need
right.
for repair going on at the same time. So what was it like to do that research on that boat that goes out and repairs these cables?
I like research. I like people too, and I like places. I don't want to tell the same story over and over and over again. I enjoy getting out into the world, seeing what people are doing. So it was great for me to go out to South Africa to meet these people who are on a boat, who go on these weeks-long missions to repair cables that are 4 or 5 kilometers down at sea. Now, you can't send a diver down that far. You can only send a diver down a couple of 100 meters at most. You can't send a submersible down. It goes to maximum a kilometer and a half, maybe 2 kilometers. So guess what you do? You throw a rope over and you use a grappling hook.
I thought it was amazing how old-fashioned
It's
all of
incredible.
this is. It's like, how do you... It's like a needle in a haystack. I mean, there's got to be a
Exactly.
better analogy, but
No, that's a perfect analogy.
a better pun or something
Yeah.
like that. Like
What it is a needle, and it is in that vast haystack of information.
and they just bring it up and they
Then they bring it
glued it
together.
together again.
Yeah, there's fusion goes on and all this sort of thing, but essentially it's the same as it was 170 years ago when they laid the first telegraph cables.
I did have to smile reading this because, of course, Let the Great World Spin. There's a cable. There's
thank you.
Petit walked over between the trade towers, and I'm a big fan of This Side of
Thank you.
Brightness, which is underground
Right.
in tunnels.
Yeah.
Now you've got these. You've got something going on with
Yeah.
with wires and cables, and especially going underground.
I don't know what it is. I mean, I could sit on any number of couches and talk to any number of psychologists or literary people or friends, and I would never be able to come up with an answer as to why I'm interested in these things, except they're all about journeys. They're about the beginnings and ends, and yet everything is circular in between. But I don't want to analyze myself. I think it'd be too messy to get inside.
Too deep, so to speak.
Too deep, the bottom of the ocean.
Well, my sense is that you're interested in worlds that people don't normally see.
Right,
You get to see.
that's true.
And a lot of that is subterranean.
Yeah, a lot of that
And then,
is
of course, a
subterranean.
lot of our emotions and, as we're talking about, the characters in this book have subterranean things they need to work on.
Imagine if we were able to go inside our own bodies, and to travel around. It's
Well,
almost like,
Being John Malkovich is one of my favorite movies.
well, there you go.
It's a very, very
Yeah.
weird.
Well, I'm sure in a few years they'll have computer chips that will float around our bodies, and they will show us exactly everything that's going on inside, and then the outside will have to come to terms with what's going on.
Our interview will be like this.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's Morse code.
Morse, we'll just be blinking our interview to each other.
Well, that's binary, right? Yeah, closed or open, closed or open, closed
Yeah.
or open. Isn't it amazing that the world operates on these binary codes 100001111? And that's how we get translated. Right now, at this moment, this interview is going out through tubes, through using binary code and using light that's flashing, pulsing billions of times per second. To me, that's amazing. It's beautiful, it's profound, and it's also terrifying at the same time too.
So was it kind of a palate cleanser in a way to do this book?
Yes.
Because, I mean, A Paragon,
Yeah.
American Mother,
Right. Yeah.
that's heavy stuff.
Heavy
I mean,
stuff.
this is not unheavy.
Right.
This is not light. This is definitely heavier,
Right.
kind of Joseph, Heart
Yeah.
of Darkness.
Right. But you're entirely right.
Influenced, but I imagine it was a way to.
But the funny thing is, I said after writing A Paragon, I'm going to write a simple story. And it's going to be a love story, and then we're all going to be grand. And so I get into this, and I'm thinking about repair and human repair, and suddenly it gets dark for me. It's like, oh no, these cables are not what I thought they were. And this repair notion, what are we repairing? Are we repairing things that will destroy us? Mm-hmm. And all these questions come into my head. I think maybe you can't escape it if you're really looking at the world and how dark it happens to be, but you must achieve some form of light, because light is the thing that you throw against the dark to crack it open in any sort of way. Leonard Cohen, there's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets through. And I think that's really important. I really think it's really important for our kids now too, and all these young people who see things in a dark way. There's a lot of suicide going on with young people who just do not see any way out. But for me, the way out is for them to be listened to, or for them to tell a story, or to listen to the stories of others.
One of the things that has not happened since I last saw you almost 15 years ago, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that at the time, Let the Great World Spin was going to be made into a movie.
Yeah.
Well, what happened?
I know. Look, it was supposed to be a movie. It became this close to being a movie, and then some other movies overtook it, and we still talk about it being a movie. But I'm writing a musical now, and Sting, who's an incredible musician, has written a song called "Let the Great World Spin," and we might do a musical together. Look, don't hold your breath. One of the great things that happened to me though recently was. I wrote American Mother, and then a person came along, a brilliant composer.
Okay.
Her name is Charlotte Bray, and she said, "Would you like to make an opera out of American Mother?" I said, "I'd love to, but I know nothing, less than nothing about operas." She said, "Well, why don't you look at it and think about it?" And so I looked at the structure of libretto, which is like an epic poem, and so I wrote a libretto, and it just last month premiered in Germany. Now, hopefully, eventually it'll come to the United States. Maybe we can do it in the Opera House in Sun Valley at some stage. Who knows?
I hope so. I read about it. It's a daunting task to take a story like that,
Right.
and turn it into anything else,
Right.
because it's so sobering.
Exactly.
But it is uplifting as
Yes.
well at the end because of Diane. And I follow you on Instagram.
Oh, thank
and
you.
And so I saw that you were in Germany with Diane Foley.
Yeah.
And Instagram's kind of an
So-
interesting tool
Yeah.
for authors if they want to use it. I
Right.
know some don't. Are you worried about AI?
No, it's a great question. I mean, I suppose I should say I don't know, but I think always down through history we've always had these things that came along and said it's going to be the end of this. It's going to be the printing machine is going to kill us. The airplane is going to be used for nefarious purposes. The internet is going to be the end of things. Typing rather than writing physically is going to be the end. I think there have been a lot of things. I think there is a danger There's an extreme danger in AI, but we need to shepherd it properly. But to turn our backs and pretend that it doesn't exist would be the wrong thing to do. It exists. It's there. Let's see what we can do to make it help us make this place a better place to stand upon. And I think that's possible.
So AI books aren't going to put you out of business.
Oh, no. Listen, I've asked AI to write a Seamus Heaney poem. They can never write a Seamus Heaney poem like Seamus would have written it. They can echo it, but they can never write the new one that will break through to a place of such extreme human beauty. I mean, I might be wrong, but I really believe that the human spirit triumphs in the end.
As we close, there's kind of perennial waves of commentary about the death of literature, the death of novels. You have written, though, that you think that novelists are not as important as they were 50 years ago, right, and that so much writing nowadays seems to suffer from a reduced moral authority. Yeah. Nobody fears what we have to say. We've allowed our voices to be devalued in favor of comfort.
Right.
So are you feeling as if most writers are not taking enough chances? Is that what it is? Or not pushing the margins, or not speaking up enough?
I like to dilate the nostrils of people. That's a pretty extraordinary, extreme statement for me to say that we have a reduced moral authority. But I kind of want to get the backup of some of these younger writers. Say, what are you talking about? You're out of your mind. I'm going to show you. I do want writers, I think, younger writers in particular, to engage more with what's going on in front of theirs. Be a little bit angry, knock people off balance a little bit more. There's a lot of bad stuff going on and being said in our name. We got to call it out. We got to stand up in front of it. And books have an extraordinary power that is sometimes more powerful than some of the things that governments and small-minded officials can do, and that you can access something profound. So I call on young writers to get in there and scuff it up a bit.
Fair enough. I hope to see you again in another 15 years.
Or sooner.
Thank you, or sooner. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me again. It's been a pleasure, as it was before.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it very much.
You've been listening to author Colum McCann, whose latest book is Twist. Our conversation was recorded at the 2025 Sun Valley Writers Conference. My thanks to conference organizers for all their help and for inviting us back to the renowned event, where we've been recording conversations since 2005. If you'd like to watch this one again, or any of the more than 80 conversations, go to the Idaho Public Television YouTube page. For Idaho Public Television, I'm Marcia Franklin. Thanks for joining us.
Major funding is provided by the Idaho Public Television Endowment and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.